All right, let's talk about one of the biggest betrayals imaginable when it comes to public duty, the misuse of our money. Today, we are diving deep into the laws, specifically from the revised Penal Code of the Philippines, that are built to protect the public treasury, to protect our trust, and to hold powerful people accountable. So, let's get right into it.
So this is the question that really gets to the heart of everything we're talking about today. We put this enormous amount of faith in public officials. We see them as the guardians of the money that, well, paves our roads, keeps our hospitals running, and pays for our kids' education. But what happens when that very guardian decides to raid the treasure they're supposed to protect? That question is going to frame our entire journey.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the guardian's sacred trust. Then we'll get into the ultimate betrayal itself, malversation. After that, we'll see how some try to cover their tracks by hiding in the paperwork, and how even small, so-called technical fouls can cause some serious harm. We'll even meet some unexpected guardians you probably didn't know about before we get to the end, the final reckoning.
All right, first up, the guardian's sacred trust. This is all about the foundational principle of public accountability.
Okay, before we even whisper the word crime, we have to get our heads around this central idea. Public money isn't just some abstract number on a screen. It's our collective piggy bank, right? It's the fund that's supposed to build our shared future. And a public officer's job is so much more than just balancing a checkbook. Their duty is really twofold. Yeah, they have to manage the money, but just as critically, they have to protect our faith that the whole system actually works. Because when that faith shatters, the damage is way, way bigger than just the cash that's gone. It eats away at the very foundation of public service. And that is why the laws we're about to unpack are so incredibly strict.
And that brings us to the main event, Article 217, the crime of malversation. Now, this isn't a simple oops or a minor clerical error. This is the big one. It's the most direct, most profound betrayal of that guardian's oath. It's that horrifying moment when the protector becomes the predator.
So who exactly are we talking about here? Who is this guardian? Well, the law is super specific. This doesn't apply to just any old government employee. It's for a public officer who is officially accountable for public funds or property. Think of a municipal treasurer, a court cashier, or literally any official who has been given that direct responsibility. Their job description, at its core, is to keep the treasury safe. They hold the keys to the vault.
Now, the law spells out 4 very clear ways this betrayal can happen. The first 2 are pretty straightforward. It's active theft. Appropriating is like using the city's road repair budget to build a new swimming pool in your backyard. Taking is, well, it's just grabbing the cash. But the next 2 are just as damning. Consenting means you're the inside man, the one who looks the other way or gives the signal for someone else to raid the vault. And this 4th one, permitting through abandonment or negligence, this one is huge. This is like leaving the vault door unlocked and the security cameras off. You might not have taken a dime yourself, but your spectacular failure to do your job made the theft possible. And in the eyes of the law, that makes you just as guilty.
Now, to go after these cases, the law has this incredibly powerful tool. It's called prima facie evidence. See, in most criminal cases, you're innocent until proven guilty, and the prosecution has to build its case from the ground up. But prima facie evidence, it totally flips the script. It creates a legal starting assumption. It's the law basically saying, listen, where there's this much smoke, we're just going to assume there's a fire unless you can prove there isn't one.
And here's exactly how that works in a malversation case. The logic is brutally simple. You, the public officer, had the keys to the vault. So, if an auditor shows up, makes a perfectly legal demand to see the money, and poof, the funds are gone. The law doesn't wait around. It immediately presumes you took it. The burden of proof instantly flips onto your shoulders. The tables are turned, and now you have to prove your innocence and explain where every last cent went.
The damage here is like a shockwave. I mean, the most obvious part is the financial loss. That money's just gone. But the deeper, more corrosive damage is that breach of public trust. People start to think the whole system is rigged. And then there's the very real disruption to public services. That money wasn't just sitting there. It was earmarked to buy medicine, to fix a bridge, to pay a teacher. When it disappears, it leaves a real, painful hole in the fabric of our communities.
So, with the law already presuming you're guilty, how do you even begin to defend yourself? Well, the options are incredibly limited. Saying, oops, I made a clerical error is not going to cut it. You have to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the loss was caused by something totally beyond your control and that you did everything you were supposed to do. For instance, if you were robbed at gunpoint, that could be a defense. But if you are robbed because you left the safe wide open all night, that's negligence, my friend, and that presumption of guilt is going to stick.
Okay, so what if you're not brave enough to just take the money?
Maybe there's another way. Some officials might try a different tactic, hiding in the paperwork. But as we're about to see, the law has a name for that too. It calls it the crime of silence.
Here we have two big ones. Article 218 is basically about stonewalling the system. Every accountable officer has to file regular financial reports. If you're more than 2 months late, that's not just lazy, it's a crime. And get this, that responsibility follows you even after you leave your job. You can't just quit and wash your hands of it. Then there's Article 219, which is all about trying to make a run for it. It makes it a crime for an accountable officer to even try to leave the country unless they have an official certificate from auditors saying their books are clean. It's like a legal anchor, holding them in place until they've answered for everything.
So you might be thinking, a late report, is that really a crime? And the answer is a huge yes. Why? Because that paperwork is the system's alarm. It's the first line of defense. When you don't file it, you're essentially disabling the alarm. It makes audits impossible and creates a perfect little black hole where corruption can thrive, completely undetected. That silence in the paperwork, it's often the perfect accomplice to a much bigger crime.
All right, so we've covered outright theft and trying to hide the evidence. But let's move into a trickier area. What if an officer uses public money for a public good, just not the right public good? This brings us to some more nuanced offenses. We're talking about situations where it might not be about personal greed, but breaking the rules still causes some very real harm.
Okay, this is a super important distinction, so lean in. Malversation, as we've seen, is taking public money for private use. It's theft. But illegal use under Article 220 is different. Here, the money stays in the public system, but it gets used for something it wasn't approved for. Think of it like this. The city budget has money specifically for a new hospital wing, but the mayor decides to use that money to build a new basketball court instead. Both are public projects, sure, but he just broke the law of appropriation. That's a serious crime in public finance.
And I know what you might be thinking. Well, what's the big deal? At least the public got a basketball court. But the harm is very real. A public budget isn't just a list of suggestions, it's the law. It's a carefully balanced plan. When an official just ignores it, they're basically saying they are above the law. It throws planning into chaos, it undermines the whole legislative process, and it's a huge mess when the people who were promised a hospital wing find out their funding just vanished. And that leads us to Article 221, which is all about pure, unadulterated defiance. This is less about being sneaky and more about just saying no. Imagine a government agency owes a contractor for a finished project. The payment is approved, the order is signed, but the guy in charge of writing the check just refuses. Or a court orders a piece of seized property to be returned, and the custodian just won't do it. This isn't misusing funds. This is a total, willful refusal to do your job. It's an act of insubordination that can grind the entire government machine to a screeching halt. Now here's where things get really interesting. We've been talking about public officers this whole time, so you're probably thinking this only applies to people with a government paycheck, right? Well, the law has a little plot twist for you. It creates a whole category of what you could call unexpected guardians. And this right here shows you that the law is smart. It focuses on your function, not your job title. Under Article 222, if you're a private citizen but you've been entrusted with public funds, say you're a contractor who got an advance to build a bridge, the law treats you exactly like a public officer. Same rules, same penalties. The same thing goes for someone appointed by a court to manage seized property. The message from the law is crystal clear. If you are touching money that is under public authority, you are taking on the sacred trust of a guardian, period. So, we've seen the crimes, we've seen the tricky situations, and we've seen how wide this net of accountability really is. Now we get to the consequences. This is where the hammer comes down, and believe me, the law doesn't just define the betrayal, it puts a very specific price on it, and that price is incredibly severe.
Just look at the penalties for malversation. It's a cold, hard mathematical formula. The prison sentence is tied directly to the amount of money who stole. We're talking Philippine pesos here. It starts at a pretty serious 2 to 6 years, but just watch how fast it climbs. Once you get into the millions, you're looking at decades behind bars. And if you steal more than 8.8 million pesos, that gets you the absolute heaviest penalty for this crime, reclusion perpetua.
And let's be really clear about what reclusion perpetua means here. This isn't some vague life sentence where you might get out on parole in a few years. No way. Under the law, this is an indivisible penalty that can mean up to 40 years. 40 years of actual time in prison. That's how seriously the law takes a massive betrayal of public trust. But wait, because it gets worse. The prison sentence is only one piece of the puzzle. If you're convicted, you also get a fine that's equal to the amount you stole. And then there's this: perpetual special disqualification. And this, for all practical purposes, is a professional death sentence. It is a lifetime ban. You can never again hold any public office, run for election, or work for the government in any capacity. Ever. The guardian who failed their duty is cast out, and they can never be trusted again.
And it's not just the headline crime of malversation that gets you. All those other offenses we talked about, they've all got teeth. Failing to file your reports on time can still land you in prison for over 2 years, plus a huge fine. That technical foul of illegally using funds, that'll get you fines and a temporary ban from office. Even just refusing to hand over property can get you 6 months. The system is designed to punish every single breach of duty, from the seemingly small stuff to the ultimate betrayal.
So, we've walked through the letter of the law, from the crime to the punishment. But let's end where we began, with that idea of trust. These laws don't just exist to get money back. They exist to protect something much more fragile, the idea that the people in power are actually there to serve the public good. So the final question I want to leave you with is this: when you add up all the prison time and all the fines, are you really measuring the true costs? Or is the real, lasting damage what happens to all of us when we can no longer trust our guardians?